He was breaking into my house. That's what she told the 911 dispatcher, the moment her glowing green plastic toy finally snapped, failing to pick my lock, leaving her humiliated on my porch. What she didn't know, what no one in Willow Creek Estates knew, was that the calm, professional voice on the other end of that emergency line wasn't just a dispatcher, it was my son, Kyle, and his quiet action on that Tuesday evening would ultimately burn down her entire HOA empire in one swift phone call. It all started so innocently, didn't it? Just another dull Tuesday evening in our cozy split-level home on Cedar Lane. Kyle was home from his shift at the county dispatch center, and we were elbows deep in takeout, the kind of Chinese food where the fortune cookie is stale and you end wrestling with the sweet and sour sauce packets. You know the ones, they just never tear right. We were just catching up talking about his goal of moving up to a full police trainee slot, when this bright yellow envelope, the kind that practically glows with passive aggression, slid under the front door with the subtlety of a freight train. Penelope Albright, queen of the HOA, was demanding $500 for a fence violation. Apparently my perfectly stained, perfectly normal cedar fence was 2 inches too high, violating some obscure subsection of the Willow Creek covenants she probably wrote herself while drinking a dry Chardonnay. I crumpled the paper, muting an unprintable word, and tossed it onto the kitchen counter, feeling that familiar, low thrum of HOA rage start to vibrate in my chest. And then the pounding started. Not a civilized knock, but a furious rhythmic thump, 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 like someone was trying to personally beat the door down. I peered through the peephole, and there she was, Penelope Albright, in all her suburban glory. Oversized white sunglasses despite the setting sun, a glittery, unnecessary handbag that likely cost more than my first car, and this ridiculous, glowing neon green skeleton key dangling from her manicured fingers like some kind of cheap, plastic Excalibur. She was dressed for what I can only describe as a corporate skirmish, a blazer so stiff it looked starched in place, and heels high enough to make her a weapon. "Open up, Liam Jensen!" she shrieked, her voice cutting across the quiet evening, like a freshly pulled fire alarm. "I have the universal key for this development, and I'm conducting a compliance inspection right now." I opened the door just enough to barricade the entryway with my body. "Evening, Penny," I said, trying to keep my voice low and level, despite the anger bubbling up. "Besides the usual delusions of grandeur, what can I help you with?" Behind. Mikhail had gone silent, but I could feel his presence, his phone probably already recording the whole surreal interaction. That kid's got good instincts. Penny thrust the key forward. It was that sickening, aggressive shade of green you usually only see on a dollar store toy or a particularly noxious energy drink. "This," she announced, with the absolute seriousness of someone unveiling a major medical breakthrough, "is a master key. I acquired it from a very respectable online security firm. Since you've ignored my notice, I am legally entering your premises to check for further infractions." The sheer audacity of the woman, the theatrical absurdity of the whole thing, would have been funny if it weren't so infuriating. "That's fascinating, Penny," I replied, crossing my arms. "Did this reputable firm also sell you a timeshare in the Everglades? Because that looks less like a master key, and more like something that fell out of a piñata." Her face went crimson beneath her carefully applied foundation, and she actually tried to shove the glowing plastic key into my lock. Of course, it didn't fit. It was too thick, the wrong shape, a complete mismatch for my actual deadbolt. She jiggled it frantically, muttering something about defective shipping, while I stood there watching this woman, who controlled the petty rules of our entire community, be defeated by a $10 novelty item. "Ma'am, you need to leave my property," I said, my patience officially evaporated. "You have zero legal right to enter my home, master key or not." That's when she pulled out her phone, with a dramatic flourish that would make a soap opera director jealous. "We'll see about that. I'm calling the authorities right now. You are harassing me, Mr. Jensen. I am the president, and you are obstructing my duties." She dialed dramatically, each button press accompanied by a theatrical sigh. 911, what's your emergency? The voice from the speakerphone was calm, professional. I heard Kyle slip away from behind me, probably heading for his room, and I remember thinking, good, I'll handle this drama on my own. Penelope launched into a tirade. Yes, this is Penelope Albright, president of Willow Creek Estates. I am at 47 Cedar Lane, and the homeowner, Liam Jensen, is threatening me. He's being aggressive and won't let me perform my lawful duties. I stayed silent, knowing anything I said would just fuel her performance. What I didn't know was that Kyle wasn't in his room. He was 3 blocks away at the dispatch center, listening to every single word with a slow, wicked grin spreading across his face. The dispatcher's, my son's, response was a thing of beautiful, professional genius. Ma'am, can you describe the nature of the threat? Are you in immediate physical danger? Penny stumbled. Well, he's standing there menacingly, and he called my master key fake. There was a pregnant pause. Then Kyle's voice, smooth, as silk, continued. Ma'am, did you say master key? For our records, can you tell me the make and model? Is this key registered with the National Locksmith Guild? I had to physically bite my lip to keep from laughing out loud. Penelope's face cycled through confusion, indignation, and finally, full-blown, flustered panic. The what? It's from MasterKeysDirect.com. They guaranteed it would work. Kyle pressed her. Ma'am, I need the make and model. We've had reports of fraudulent locksmith tools being sold online. She actually dropped her designer handbag, scattering lipsticks and a pile of citation pads all over my porch. I don't understand. It's just a key, a master key. The website said so. More neighbors were starting to peek out, curtains twitching, enjoying the free neighborhood theater. And then my phone vibrated. A text from Kyle. Got this, Dad. That's when I realized the full, glorious extent of what was happening. My brilliant, slightly devious kid was running the show from the dispatcher's desk, and the HOA queen had no idea she was talking to my son. Sirens started wailing faintly in the distance, and Penny stopped pacing, a slow, calculating smirk spreading across her face as she pulled a tiny camera out of her bag. I knew that smirk. Whatever she was planning, the key was just the opener. Now came the staged performance. Officer Mendez pulled up, a veteran cop who looked exactly like a man who'd dealt with Penny Albright one too many times. Penny immediately launched into victim mode, dabbing at her perfectly dry eyes with a lace. Handkerchief. Officer Mendez, thank goodness, this man, she pointed a trembling, dramatic finger at me, has been terrorizing me. She then showed the officer a photo. An image of my house, except the house number was wrong, the windows were different, and the fence was this obnoxious, eye-watering shade of neon pink. She was using doctored evidence. Mendez squinted between the phone and my perfectly normal home, confusion clear on his face. That's when Henry Walsh, the retired mechanic 2 doors down, chose his moment. He leaned over his own fence, his voice rough and loud. Hey, officer, while you're here, maybe you should know Penny fined me $500 today for siding with a rule violator. All I did was wave at Liam this morning. That broke the spell. Mendez's brow furrowed, and he looked at Penny with something close to disgust. Ma'am, I think it's time you went home, and I'd be very careful about presenting potentially falsified evidence. That's a serious matter. As she was getting into her absurdly large luxury SUV, giving me a final hateful glare. This isn't over, Jensen. I know things about you. I knew she'd only be back for more. The next morning, the battle lines were drawn. I met up with Sophia Alvarez, the ER nurse from the corner, who was juggling single motherhood and a demanding job. Sophia wasn't just my ally, she was my investigator. She pulled up her laptop, showing me Venmo transfers and email threads, evidence that Penny was using the HOA beautification fund for personal luxury purchases. Then Henry stomped in, his face redder than a fire hydrant. They cut my power. Liam, I called the utility company. They said there was a stop order from the HOA for non-payment of fees I never even heard of. Interfering with utilities? That crossed a line from petty tyranny into criminal action. Then, the true nuclear option. Penny's voice, broadcast over every HOA email and community app, demanding an emergency assessment of $15,000 per household immediately, or face lien proceedings, all to pursue legal action against me. Panic spread like wildfire across the community, but Kyle was ready. He conferenced me, Sophia, and Henry in on his phone, while he was on the air with Penny, who had called 911 again from the community center parking lot, claiming we were inciting a riot. And then he played the tape. Kyle's voice was calm. "Ma'am, you're reporting a conspiracy, but our GPS shows you're not at home. Can you explain why you're calling from the community center parking lot?" Then he started playing audio clips of her past 911 calls, her own voice echoing the absurdity. "I need units at Henry Walsh's house immediately. His memorial tree is a code violation. And Sophia Alvarez is harboring anti-HOA sentiment. She needs to be investigated." The pattern was undeniable. She had been using 911 as her personal harassment hotline for months. I stood there, listening to my son's voice, professional, quiet, devastatingly effective, exposing this woman, not just protecting me, but saving this entire neighborhood from her relentless abuse. My eyes actually welled up. "You're the hero here, Kyle," I managed to say, my voice thick with emotion. The final meeting was a spectacle. News vans were parked outside, and inside, state investigators stood waiting. Penny, completely isolated at the board table, clutched that pathetic neon key. She tried one last smear, claiming I falsified electrical work, but Mrs. Thompson, whose house I'd rewired, immediately stood up. "Ryan gave us a 50% discount. He's the most honest contractor we have." Then, Sophia's tablet flashed onto the projector screen. 47 fraudulent 911 calls in the last 6 months. Henry, holding a thick manila folder, walked to the front. He pulled out the petition, worn and thick. 237 households, 94% of the HOA. "We're not asking you to resign, Penny," he growled, his voice deep with righteous anger. "We are demanding. This is the voice of everyone you've bullied. Everyone you've fined, everyone you've tried to crush under your designer heels." The cheer that went up was deafening. Penny's composure finally shattered. She stood up, knocking her chair over, shrieking about ungrateful idiots and property values, backing frantically towards the door, still clutching that pathetic key, and she backed directly into the 2 state investigators who were waiting for her. "Mrs. Albright," one said calmly, "we're going to need you to come with us. You have the right to remain silent." As they let her out, still ranting about conspiracies, she looked at me one last time, her eyes promising a final, desperate revenge. We won. We celebrated with stale takeout pizza, the kind that reminds you of a simpler time, and we started rebuilding our community based on mutual respect. Henry's tree is safe, Sophia's stress is gone. But later that night, I found a plain envelope tucked under my doormat. Inside, just one line. "Willow Creek isn't done with you." Maybe Penny was just the tip of the iceberg of HOA corruption. Maybe there's always another Karen waiting in the wings. But as I crumpled that note and tossed it in the trash, looking at my son, my home, and the peace we'd fought for, I realized something. Whatever came next, we'd face it together. What do you think? Was Dylan right to use his position to take her down? Or should he have stayed strictly neutral? Drop a comment below, tell me your biggest HOA horror story, and don't forget to like and subscribe to BD Stories so you don't miss the final chapter of the Willow Creek saga.